Good morrow, Ashers. That was a little bit louder than normal, but welcome to another episode of my coverage of Ashes of Creation. I was on a bit of a hiatus for the last few weeks, so my apologies for that. I've had a rough few weeks behind my back, but I am pretty much back until, well, maybe I just have to move, which is going to be a pain with internet and all, but after that, I'll be back in full swing. Anyway, with today's topic, I am going to cover the new live stream and combat and boss fight that we saw a few weeks ago, or a little week ago, on the live stream for the month. And that's pretty much going to be what I'm talking about. It's going to be a little bit of analysis and opinion piece, so hope I don't drone on too long. Let's jump into it, shall we? First off, just get some context out of the way if you missed the stream and the video itself. I've linked it below, just in case you want to take a look. It's quite long, but this will be pretty much a summary with the things that I find important. It is incredibly important that we remember that this is an open world build boss at level 10, and is actually designed for 40 players at that level. Some of the devs playing here are kind of cheating with some GM commands, and the fight is way longer than it needs or is intended to be, so just keep that in mind while we discuss all of this. Before the fight even starts, Intrepid, Stephen, introduces us to environmental mechanics that are tied to the boss, like fire fields that do damage when you stand in them, and purple crystals that drain your mana when you touch them. I really like the idea of being cognizant of where you are standing, and an interactive environment really adds a lot to the fight. These kinds of mechanics should be heavily leaned upon for an interactive experience, and hopefully we'll see a lot of variation in these mechanics like debuffs, damage, force movement, and all kinds of things relating directly to the environment itself. Speaking of forced movement, the boss also has quite a range of CC that move you around during the fight. Combining the intricacies of environmental effects like the ones previously mentioned and the forced movement really makes the fight much more interactive than it seems. While the fight seems slow and kind of boring from a viewing perspective, as they play and you can see them panicking when they get pushed into these different environmental effects, you can see that they are actually focusing on staying outside of them. At least he tries to. Really, Stephen tries to. A good tank could potentially keep the boss way more still for more optimal runs and actually go and control the fight so that the players are able to focus more on the DPS and healing side of things and worry less about being forcibly moved around. Obviously, this would require the tank to manage aggro very reliably, but it is definitely something that I'm excited to see.
Oh god.
Don't stand in the no-no zone.
On the subject of tanking and aggro control and controlling the flow of a fight, throughout the fight the team is talking about how certain people have aggro and that Steven, the one who's using the GMX for higher HP, is unable to take control of the boss. He is after all playing a mage and shouldn't be able to take control easily. I don't know if this was an intended show-off of the aggro mechanic, but I appreciate it happening as it did, since aggro is one of the more nuanced mechanics in MMOs and can make or break lots of classes and content simply by being poorly implemented. A tank should control the fight. Other classes should have a hard time to take aggro away. When Steven does eventually manage to take aggro from the boss for at least a little short time, you can clearly see a few things that I have a lot of concern about. One of them being an evade that happens while he's casting and not actually moving around at all. This seems to be a passive effect. I don't know if it's part of the GM commands, but I do not want this in the game. No game should have, at least not an MMO should have, or a multiplayer game should have passive dodging and evade frames in the game unless it is an active dodge or an active ability that is cast for a very short period of time. Passively dodging skills or evading skills or evading damage is a pretty bad way to go about doing that combat in any game, really, for that matters. I hope this is a GM command, but if it isn't, I really hope that they rethink it. It shouldn't exist. Moving on to really the combat itself. It seems a little bit clunky, at least for the mage. I don't know if this is because of how Steven is playing or because the cast time on the skill seems to be a little bit long. That does seem to be the case to me though. It seems the cast times are just a little bit too lengthy, which slows down the fight to an extreme degree. I hope that the other classes have more combo-based gameplay that actually turns it into a faster paced system. I mean, the mage is all about damage. I pretty much don't care if the mage is the simplified class with a lot of nuking abilities and very little, how can I put this, intricacy to it, but then most of the classes should not be the simplistic. While I don't necessarily want them to get rid of the global CD completely, I think that some classes like Fighter and Rogue should be much faster and more combo based, especially being able to chain abilities together to get certain effects or certain skills together or effects together is a really good idea. WoW does this really well, where if you build up certain mechanics like rage or bleeding if you're playing rogue or stuff like that, where you combo certain things, build up a certain amount of resources, and then the following attack or specific attack consumes those abilities or those stacks to deal extra damage, and meeting certain conditions and stuff. That adds a lot of depth to the fights, and I don't think that this is currently present in the game. If casting your abilities one by one with zero synergy between them is what they're going for, I'm not going to be very impressed, and I'm really going to get bored with the combat in this game, especially in a PvP setting. With that being said, there are a lot of good things in this fight that appears great. For example, the visuals are stunning. Absolutely stunning. The animations seem already very clear cut with very minimal clipping going on between the bosses. The effects themselves are very good looking. The downside, of course, is that it is noisy as heck in terms of visual clutter. There is a lot going on, and to consider this is what, 8 people, 6 people playing a fight, and this should be 40 people. It is going to be insane experiencing this fight, and I'm not sure it's insane in a good way. Don't get me wrong, the fight still is gorgeous and I love the effects, but unfortunately in a real-world gameplay perspective, this only serves to detract from the combat and actually dumb it down a little. These effects need to be tuned down drastically, so relevant abilities that need to be avoided can be avoided. So relevant abilities that need to be casted can be casted with informed decisions being made, and not turn it into spammy based combat or just simply outstatting everything. Outstatting everything is the worst possible solution for combat, and that's what it's going to become if the combat is too spammy in terms of visual noise. And since I like ending my videos on a positive note, there is something that I absolutely adore right now. It is worth noting very clearly that there isn't a single consumable being popped within this fight. No healing potions, no mana potions, nothing. Instead, healers and other casters rely on mana generation via abilities like castigation and stuff like that. I actually mention this, and gifting each other mana as they play. I absolutely hate the idea of spamming short duration and instant return consumables in combat. I would much rather have a 30-minute effect on a potion to gain an X percentage, albeit small, like mana regeneration or more damage or whatever you need to do to make alchemy interesting. These effects need to provide a small but still significant buff, but you need to prepare beforehand without needing an entire inventory full of junk. Content should not rely on having access to these consumables. Well guys, thank you very much for listening. I should be back, like I said, more regularly right now, which I hope is going to be an easy move for me. I really enjoy making these videos. If you enjoy them as well, I would love it if you guys can like or just subscribe or just share the videos, whatever you'd like to do. I also have a Twitter as well as a Discord account, which you can find in the, or Discord server, which you can find in the description below. I really want to create a community and actually enjoy the game's development with you guys. So let me know what you think. I really would like feedback. I have a lot of ideas for content, but right now it is just a bit crazy. Needless to say, have an awesome 2021, guys. May it be better than 2020. Good night.